Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is your host, Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're talking about censorship. Okay, everybody, I have an announcement to make, and so I'm going to make it right now. Hello. That's not the announcement, but I figured I'd say hi. So I started this thing. If you've been rocking with me for a while, thank you. I appreciate you. And this podcast, which is called the Perspective Podcast, is part of a bigger project called PACT, which is a acronym for philosophy and critical thinking, which, when the pandemic is not happening, involves workshops and community discussions and a talk show that I do on Instagram called Reality Chat, and then this podcast. And the whole idea is about sharing ideas, connecting people, and getting people to engage with things that aren't there every day, that expand their mind, and get us into situations where we can disagree with each other, we can learn from each other, we can see different perspectives, and not get mad at each other and egg each other's house or send each other death threats and stuff. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to learn from each other. It's okay to be different. And to push that out there and say yo, this is good. It's good to disagree. Not on everything, but it's crazy if everybody has the same thought. And it's crazy if everybody shuts their mouth every time somebody has a different idea. Hey, let's talk about it. Let's learn something. So as part of that, specifically for this podcast, I started this campaign where I bought a seriously large amount of postcards, a bunch of postcards, and I put what are those things on? Stamps on them. And so if I'm trying to encourage people to send mail to each other so that they can connect and hopefully talk about stuff. And so if you're interested in that, I can send you a postcard, an empty postcard, because I don't know you. I don't know what I would write to you. But the idea is I can send you a postcard, and then you can send it to somebody, after you write on it, and then you can, start a conversation with them. And it'd be, super dope if it actually worked out and you guys had a good talk or you became pen pals or whatever. So, you can DM me or direct message me at my Instagram account, which is at JordanTremaine_. You can email me at jordantremaine3@gmail.com. Get in contact with me somehow, but got a bunch of these postcards. If you want some, I can give them to you. They come with stickers. I got some really sweet stickers, so go to my Instagram page. There's probably a post or two that show these sweet shiny holographic stickers with the logo. So yeah, I'm trying to encourage conversation. So if you about it, if you about that conversation life, if you about that challenging talk, that real dialogue life, then get at your boy, and I'll send you a postcard or two. So yeah, I thought I would share that with you guys. But we're going to move on because the announcements are done. We're going to move on to today's topic, which is censorship. And I want to talk about censorship. It's something that happens, and I'm going to talk about two forms of it. As I was looking over the notes that I made for this, it seems to me it's the liberal and the conservative versions of censorship. I'm not sure which is which, but that was funny. They seem like opposites. That's why I say that. But I'm going to explain these ideas. One I think is pretty commonplace, the regular way most people think about censorship. But the other one I think is a little bit more subtle. But I think if you're aware of it, it can help you to have better conversations. So I think in regular conversation, in my world at least, the idea is to exchange ideas and learn from one another and have a situation where everybody involved in the conversation walks away with more that they came with. And there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't happen or why communication can break down, and one of those reasons I'm going to talk about now is censorship. And within censorship, I'm going to talk about, like I said before, two possibilities. There's probably more, but I'm going to focus on two. So censorship, for the sake of this podcast, is going to happen in two ways. The first way, which I think everybody is familiar with, if you know the definition of censorship, is when, like, let's say I'm Jordan and I'm talking to Bob, and I'm trying to express to Bob an idea or a thought, and it's making Bob uncomfortable. Bob does something to like not let me express that idea. Like he tries to change the subject, he throws a tantrum, he punches me in the face, he hangs the phone up, he does something to try and not let that idea get out or exist and thrive. Not that it's the right idea or a wrong idea, a good idea, a bad idea. It's just an idea that for whatever reason Bob wants to squash. And so there's that basic idea of censorship where we're trying to like actively cover up an idea. And I think that's kind of the basic definition of censorship that most people are familiar with. Maybe not all the tactics for how people censor, but it's kind of like on TV when something, I guess, explicit is shown and they put that like black bar over somebody's like boobies or their butt or something like that so you don't see it. It's like there's something there that I don't want you to see, or there's some information that I don't want you to have access to, so I cover it up. I try to hide it. I try to push it away so you're like, oh, those aren't boobies. That's a black box. But a lot of times when you censor, it's like everybody knows those are boobies. So anyways, that's one type of censorship. And the other type of censorship that I'm going to explain today, I think is interesting. And the reason that I'm even having this podcast is to kind of focus on this second way, because I think it's more subtle. And because this podcast is me talking, it's something that I fall into way more than the first one, I think, like from my perspective. So, buyer beware, or hey, beware of this, because it's something that trips me up. So I wanted to share other people so maybe it can help them not trip up. But this is when, so again, I'm talking to Bob, Jordan is talking to Bob, and I'm trying to express to Bob an idea, and he's not getting it. Or he's not getting it in the way I want him to get it. He's not having the reaction I want him to have, like the deep understanding. And you could go listen to the podcast that I did about depth inversions. I think that talks a lot about kind of what I'm talking about in like logic aliasing and the emotion machine stuff, where you're trying to express something to somebody, but they're not in a place where they can accept the information you're trying to give them. So I think the system coupling podcast and the what did I just say? It was the one that we just did. I forgot, but I just said it. The depth inversion podcast. I think those ones are good to go listen to if that's interesting to you. But so Bob isn't understanding the way that I want him to understand, and to me, normally, for whatever reason, it's like I have this thought that I'm not being understood because I'm not explaining it well enough. I'm not meeting them where they're at, and I need to be better at explaining. And so I try to make myself more understandable. And this can get way out of hand where I'm like going overboard and doing all the things, and I'm making even making a podcast to try to explain thoughts to people. And it gets to this point where I'm doing so much to try to explain something to somebody that the amount of work I'm doing to try and get you to understand something, it kind of turns into a filibuster. And if you're not familiar with a filibuster, it's like what the politician dudes do, where like if they have to like decide something, like politicians, they gotta like get together and like decide on laws and stuff. They sometimes like sit down and they got a certain amount of time, or they got to do it in one session or something like that. And then some dude that wants to like halt progress, he can get up and he can just talk, because everybody gets the right to talk, and they can talk for like however long they want. And there's this strategy in politics where you can just talk for so long that it tires everybody out, and then or it doesn't give anybody else a chance to talk, and then we don't get all the information we need, or we get information overload, we get fatigued or something like that, because somebody is just talking and talking and talking and talking. And it changes the way we vote on it, because we didn't really give other people a chance to talk, or we talked so much that it like information overloaded people. And people filibuster for like crazy amounts of time, like 40 hours or something like that. They just get on the podium and just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and it just like makes you go crazy with how much they're talking. So basically, I think when you're trying to explain something too much, you're basically doing a filibuster. Hopefully it's not 40 hours, but you're like shoving all this information, trying to get somebody to understand, and effectively, you end up censoring the other person, because you stop having a conversation, you stop having dialogue, you stop really giving them the opportunity to input and grow the conversation, because you've stopped the conversation and you basically said like, hey, we are going to stop here until you understand this, and we're not going to do anything else. And so you just start dumping all this information onto them, trying to explain something to them, which I think is not for a bad reason. Like, I think you're trying to do something nice, you're trying to explain something to somebody, but the effect it has, like when you think about how the other person is viewing it, how the other person is perceiving it, you're like taking over, you're commandeering the conversation and saying like, hey, we are going to talk about this until we get it the way I want it. And you're censoring Bob. I'm censoring Bob because I don't give him a chance to talk about anything else, or give his input, or even have his own understanding. Like, I'm trying to explain till he understands to my satisfaction, but maybe he can have his own understanding, and maybe he's not as impressed with something that I'm impressed with. Maybe he doesn't like what I think is super beautiful about this concept, and he's like, oh yeah, and I'm like really trying to say like, no, it's like really good, and he's like, yeah, I get it, and I'm like, no, you don't get it, this and this and this, and that can go on forever. And maybe he does get it, but he doesn't care. So I think that this idea of you or me or whoever filibustering as a way to censor other people is very real. It's not just a political idea. It can happen, and I think it's ultimately a form of insecurity, where like you want other people to understand what you're talking about, and you're panicking or feeling desperate, like this is me, that what you thought doesn't really make sense, or that it's not accepted as a thought within like the public sphere or whatever. And I think being aware of this is good, and also just being comfortable and confident in your thoughts. And even if everybody else disagrees, it's okay. You had a thought, it's your thought. I think having those ideas and being like centered and grounded within yourself can help you to avoid censoring people by over-explaining, because then you're just like, yeah, take it for what it is. If you don't get it, or if you want to ask more questions, you'll ask questions. I think a lot of times when you get into this over-explaining thing, I think we forget that if somebody's really interested, they'll ask questions, and if they're not asking questions, maybe they're not even interested. But this was a little concept. This episode is going to be a little short, but it's cool. I'm trying to explain one concept per episode, and it's funny. I'm talking about filibustering, and I'm going to have a short episode this week, so not to filibuster you too much, but have good conversations. Believe in what you say. Have confidence. And if somebody's not trying to hear it, or not trying to understand it the way you perceived them to understand it, it's okay. It's like when you give somebody a gift and they're not like super ecstatic about it, and like when you bought the gift, you're like, oh, they're going to be so excited, and then they open the gift and they're like, oh, this is cool. That's okay. That's just what happened. So, this has been the Perspective episode on censorship. I hope it gave you something that was interesting, and I hope it leads to a good conversation somewhere down the road. Also, again, to repeat the announcement, get at me if you want some of these postcards. I think this is going to be kind of a long-term project that I'm going to keep up basically forever. So, yeah, let me know. Anyways, talk to you guys later.